Well, the single biggest misconception is that social media is a fad, because in technology we see these waves of fads and things come and go, and people are just sort of saying, well, this is something that was there for the young, and now I can just sort of wait it out, and then it'll be done, and in a few years I can move to something else. So I think people don't realize social media is here to stay. Well, at one level the gap is decreasing, on the other level the gap is not really changing. Let me give you an example. If you look at the actual usage in terms of the elder generation or the older generation adopting social media platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and so on, more and more people are moving on to those platforms from the older generation, older cohort groups. So in terms of actual usage patterns, the gap is narrowing. In fact, the fastest growing segments on these platforms often are people above 40. Now, having said this, the biggest place where the gap is, I would say, not necessarily shrinking, but probably staying the same or in fact increasing, is the place where it comes to values and basic culture. A lot of the young people that today are growing up, they're growing up in a world that is very open, that is very global, that is very open, transparent, interactive, real time. And that defines a kind of interaction, that defines a kind of value system which today is not necessarily present in the older generation. So I think the biggest gap is in values as opposed to actual usage. Well, business is a part of living. It's not really a separate part. So I think it's quite natural that when people change the way they live and interact with each other, business will be affected. So business is affected, of course, when employees inside a company change the way they interact with each other inside a company. Business is also affected when your customers are expecting something else from you. So it's only natural that business will have to change, and you see that happening already in companies. Well, I would say that you don't go onto a platform for the sake of being on a platform. You need to have strategic goals for your business, because every business has its own strategic goals. And then you have to ask the question, do these platforms or do these social media capabilities give you that additional possibility, additional leverage to be able to achieve your strategic goals faster, more effectively? Well, the first thing, as I said earlier, is that social media is here to stay. So it's not something that you can wish away. The second thing is that social media is a very powerful business tool, and I emphasize that, a business tool for achieving your business goals. Be that in branding, be that in engaging with the key stakeholders, or in just increasing your leadership profiles in organization. And the third thing that I'd emphasize is that if you really want to adopt social media, it's less about platforms and more about value, changing your own behaviors. Well, many CEOs today, they live in a world which is very protected, very, I would say that we live in a world where, we have tight kimonos around us. And today in social media, or in a world where the cultural values are much more open, much more transparent, CEOs are being asked to open the kimonos a little bit more, to expose themselves in a healthy manner to people around them. Now, this is very frightening for people who have been used to protecting the identity, protecting the communication, and this is a big change in terms of how they interact with people around them. So there's a major change required, major shift in terms of decisions about how you present yourself to the world around you, to your own employees, to society, to people in other stakeholder positions. And more openness, more transparency can be quite frightening. Now, as part of the whole leadership mystique that has been put in business today, the element of control is very important. Leaders are supposed to be in control. But as soon as you start opening up and you start sharing and you start actually becoming more transparent, you might have to give up some of the control. So a very big challenge that I see in this process is how do CEOs loosen some of that tendency to control. Loosen control, of course, without losing control.
Any other tips or tricks that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, my recommendation is that don't treat this area like a magic. There's no magic out here. It's just another simple extension of what we do as normal human beings dealing with each other. But of course, do realize the power of the platform. Today, the social media platforms give you tremendous potential to reach to a global audience. And it is your challenge and your own desire about how you want to exploit these platforms. And no two strategies will be the same, but at the same time, you have to define your own personal social media strategy, not just for your corporation. Your personal social media strategy does matter.
Thank you very much, Professor Dutta.
Thank you very much. Good luck.